So Chainsaw Man Part 2 is finally here, starting off with the explosive Chapter 98, titled Bird and War, two things which are very much linked in this chapter. And so we start the chapter in what seems to be a high school with individuals all around the same age as Denji was at the end of the last arc. They are being introduced to the chicken devil, named Bucky, who just looks like a regular chicken with its head cut off and wearing a bow tie. They are going to be keeping him for 3 months as a class pet before they eat him. Apparently it's a part of a lesson on how precious life is. And can I say the fact that they are using weaker devils in such a mundane way, really helps to sell the fact that devils have existed alongside humans since time before recorded history. Devils are a part of human culture as much as any animal or force of nature is, and as such we respect and fear those things that can do harm to us and make use of those that can't or have been tamed for our benefit. The fact that Bucky is so pitiful and afraid of being eaten and dying seems to warm him to the rest of the class, all except for one. But also the fact that Bucky says being eaten will kill him, is interesting, since the chicken devil may be assuming that being eaten by a human would have similar results to being eaten by the Chainsaw Man. The idea of being eaten must be fundamentally terrifying for all devils, regardless of who or what they are, because of Chainsaw Man's rampages in hell. But anyway, this is where we get introduced to the main character of this chapter, as I'm afraid to tell you there is no actual appearance of Denji throughout the entire chapter, at least in person. We see images of Chainsaw Man and other references, but he is completely absent, so that we can instead focus on this fine lady, Mitaka. A young lass who separates herself from the rest of her classmates by not only disliking Bucky but most of her classmates as well, willing some of them to simple drop dead. Apparently her less than stellar attitude comes from her parents' death at the hands of an unknown devil. No doubt she's in the grieving stage still, but has yet to realize she is in fact grieving their deaths. As such she simply seeks to be alone. So she heads up onto the roof of the school, where she is met with the class president, who has a chat with Mitaka about how being alone won't net her any friends, to which our lovely leading lady responds that she doesn't need friends and that they are pointless. The president seems to mock her overly dramatic and emo-styled response, before deciding she'd have her own lunch up there as well. This is where we get our first reference to Denji, as apparently he has become so famous that food brands have begun to stick him on their labels and even produce collectible stickers. Showing how Denji has really gone from being a nobody to a work-recognized icon, even if people don't recognize him in his human form. It is really showing just how the world is changing around them. Then we get a beautiful display of Fujimoto's background style, many buildings piled up on top of one another, with large pipes running between them and clear signs of degradation. It really highlights what Mitaka says about the city being illegally constructed. She also calls out the fact that a devil like Chainsaw Man is playing at a devil hunter is corrupt as the mayor with a DUI and having a chicken devil as a pet. The president seems to take it on in stride, telling her to just deal with the fact Bucky is there, since he'll be dead in 100 days or so anyway. That's when Mitaka says she wishes Bucky and Chainsaw Man would both hurry up and die. Honestly, there's being in mourning and then there is being willfully ignorant and selfish, wishing death upon others for no crime beyond existing, even more so in the case of Chainsaw Man, who has actively saved many lives and in a sense the world from Makima. That latter part being forgivable given it's unknown just how many people know about Makima's actions up until this point, but the other things. She just comes off as someone who is too self-interested for the good of others to come into her mind at the current point, like a lot of teenagers actually, and even a lot of adults. An interesting trait difference between her and Denji: he was selfless when it came to others' well-being, at least with regards to those who were in his direct area. Anyway, from here we see time passing, with the class growing more and more attached to Bucky, who seems to just be a genuinely good devil for the most part, making jokes and entertaining the class. It might also read as him trying his best to earn sympathy points or build up strong enough relationships to avoid his untimely demise, but I honestly like to think that it's just the sort of individual Bucky is. But of course the day when Bucky was to be killed came around, and Mitaka seems genuinely pleased to see his demise coming on its way, once again highlighting a difference between her and Denji. Denji didn't relish killing, especially not of those who had never done anything genuinely harmful to him, and would even go out of his way to defend people he considered as good or at the least innocent, even if it would result in himself being harmed. But of course before that can happen, the president stands up, followed by the rest of the class, who declare they have decided not to eat Bucky. Of course Mitaka seems stunned, probably very annoyed by this turn of events. Even as the president explains that Bucky is their friend, she doesn't seem moved at all. However, as it turns out, this was the outcome the teacher was hoping for. It was a lesson about the importance of life, be it a human or a devil. He is even brought to tears by the declaration and declares to cancel class so they can go outside and play. The teacher, of course, attempts to convince Mitaka to join in, once again trying to convince her that school is more fun with friends, only to be rebuked that she's there to study, not make friends. The president comes over trying to convince her to join in when Bucky flies into her grasp. He uses her full name while telling her to join in. Apparently no one except the class president and teachers ever remembered her name. And as she looked past the chicken devil, she could see her classmates smiling and waiting for her to join them. We then see her flash back to her earlier annoyances, as her face takes on a more joyful expression, claiming that she was jealous of them. But of course, because this is a Fujimoto work, we can't have nice things, and immediately as she passes by the class president, she falls flat on her face and crushes Bucky in the process, spilling his guts everywhere and killing him. Of course this doesn't sit well with the class, or Mitaka either, as she throws up and passes out, thinking about how if one of the class was to be voted to jump off a roof, it would be her, and that she would vote for herself too. In my eyes this makes it pretty clear she has some deep self-loathing, and that despite saying that she wanted people and beings to die, she never actually meant any of it and couldn't stomach the idea of killing another person. We then get shown Bucky's small little wooden grave post in the schoolyard, with many flowers placed around it, and scenes of Mitaka going to class only to get stared at silently before we transition back to her curled up in her bed crying until there is several knocks at her front door. Turns out it's the teacher and the class president, coming to bring her to Bucky's grave, the president speaking about how Bucky would forgive her in heaven. Interesting to see the idea of heaven being presented to a devil, where it's known that devils reincarnate rather than truly die. It might just be words, but it calls into question if people actually know the truth about devils reincarnating, of if they think it's a completely different devil every single time, or if they believe there is a species of the same devil, where when one dies, a new member of that species just comes along into the human world to take the old one's place. Either way, it's an interesting thought process. Anyway, back to the rest of the chapter. Here is where things start to heat up. As Mitaka refuses to cross the road, the class president begins to complain about her being a goody two-shoes because she won't cross unless the light turns green, even when there is no traffic around and it's the middle of the night. The teacher agrees with her, despite having crossed the road himself, and the president begins to complain, saying how the teacher, Mr. Tanaka, apologized for Bucky's death to the class for her, how Mr. Tanaka was the one who told her to be friends with her, and how he likes her despite having sex with the class president. And here we get that signature less than moral side of Fujimoto's writing, a teacher having sex with his students, and it's not even the main feature as we witness her body contort and twist, muscles bulging and ripping through her flesh as she contorts, much to everyone's horror, as she gains multiple heads, some of which seem to be fused together by the face, and apparently this is the Justice Devil, who she made a contract with so she could get a happy ending with her teacher. See her is why you don't let teenagers with all their hormones and whatnot make contract with devils, and why devils should always go after them because they're too stupid and too wrapped up in their own things to realize the consequences for their actions. Hell, not even most adults can think of the long-term ramifications of their actions. As for the design of this devil, it's interesting and reminds me of the muscle devil we saw in Chainsaw Man Part 1, just bigger and more grotesque. And of course this is where we see just how truly deranged the president is, declaring that she can't have what she wants because Mitaka is alive. So here we learn that she is the one who tripped Mitaka and caused her to kill Bucky. Why? What part of this was justice? Who knows? Honestly, I'm not even certain if that is the true justice devil, or maybe it's a devil's justice. Either way, it's a cruel thing to do, if not to Mitaka then to Bucky, who hadn't actually done anything wrong and was just an innocent bystander. And in the moment before her untimely demise, Mitaka had the realization that everyone was jealous of someone, and how if she had realized that sooner she could have had a better life where she could have had friend, maybe a boyfriend. And as her face was ripped open, her final thought before was to wish she had lived more selfishly. So I said earlier that she had a selfish personality, but she also didn't live by that personality, as we saw with her reaction to Bucky's death. She was just a person, like most characters in this series, somehow broken. That's when a bird, an owl resting on top of the traffic light, speaks up to the dying Mitaka, telling her that if she wants to live then her body will be theirs, and in that moment she seems to agree as she rises up again, face restored, much to the president's confusion, seemingly not having heard the bird speak to Mitaka, while Mr. Tanaka looks on in shock before his head is pulled from his body, as his spine is made into a sword for the newly risen Mitaka, and as the president looks on in fright and somehow the severed head of Mr. Tanaka continues screaming, she declares herself as the War Devil. And I can't express how happy I am to hear that. I have so many ideas for videos now, and I'll be getting right on them as soon as I finish this one, but anyway. The president attempts to kill Mitaka only to get her giant arm cut off and transformed into a grenade. And as the president goes in for another attack, she's cut straight across the center, showing her lower half was still normal. And as the giant body fell, she kissed the head of Mr. Tanaka and wore through the grenade over to them, causing them to explode, while expressing it was a happy ending. All the while War walks away with glee on her face before stopping to look at a poster of Chainsaw Man, and then the final scene of the chapter. Oh, the final scene. War says she'll make Chainsaw Man vomit backup nuclear weapons. Hell yeah. I had a theory ages ago that devils who embodied a broader fear, like War, would become weaker once nuclear weapons was taken out. This pretty much proves it. I can't think of why else War would care so much. Also, this is our first true confirmed horseman of the apocalypse. As for the form the War Devil first took, well, Pochita was a dog, although that was apparently because he was weakened. Does that mean War was also weakened into that bird-like form? So many questions, no answers, but I'm so hype right now. I just have to get this out so I can start getting on with the theory crafting and explanations and explorations in other videos. But safe to say, we are truly heading for war. I've been the Anonymous Weeb, and I wish you a good day or night wherever you may be, and if you enjoyed the video and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell and tell me your thoughts in the comments below.